Good evening, good afternoon, good now, most especially to everyone joining us here today from around the globe for the THK Road to G20 series with today's event focusing on financing education, tackling the learning deficit through digital solutions. I am Shobila Walata, Director of Academics and Learning Programs at United in Diversity Foundation. Let's begin. And I take great pleasure in handing you over to our host today, His Excellency Tantowi Yahya, Indonesia's roving ambassador to the Pacific, who's also the THK Forum Executive Lead and United in Diversity President. Mr. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Shobi, for the very gracious introductions. I feel so much honored and glad with that. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu, salam sejahtera, salam buat kita semuanya. Selamat malam. Good evening. Honorable Nadiem Makarim, Minister of Education, Culture, Research and Technology of the Republic of Indonesia, Dr. Vivi Yulaswati, MSc, PLT, Deputy for Prime Affairs, Deputy for Maritime Affairs and Natural Resources, Ministry of National Planning and Development for Indonesia, Dr. Lisbeth Stier, Executive Director, the Education Commission, Cherry Nur Salim, co-founder of United in Diversity, Sir Gordon Duff, former Pro-Vice-Chancellor of Sports University. Welcome, Your Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, and friends. We are very honored to welcome you to our first fully online THK Forum event. We are based in beautiful Bali under the aegis of United in Diversity Foundations, but are proud of our global outreach. This is one of a series of pre-G20 talks on a range of SDG-related topics. In November, we look forward to welcoming many of you in person and online to the island of Kura-Kura in Bali, where we will host the G20 delegates. This event, Financing Education, Tackling the Learning Deficit Through Digital Solutions, is co-run with the Education Commissions and off the back of the recent launch of the International Finance Facility for Education, or IFFED, at the United Nations Transforming Education Summit, where world leaders backed the establishment of the first ever innovative guarantee pool specially designed to invest in the education of the world's purest children and youth in September. This is severe worldwide education crisis. The learning situation is no doubt disrupted because of the pandemic. Learning poverty has increased by a third in low and middle income countries, with 70% of children not able to read a simple text at age of 10, and more than half of today's children and youth, 825 million, are projected to reach adulthood without the skills needed to thrive. Learning losses resulting from the pandemic have further exacerbated the education crisis and could cause these generations to lose up to $21 trillion in future earning. While education has been badly hit by the crisis, it is also the key driver of recovery. Education is at the heart of the Sustainable Development Agenda and essential to create healthy, prosperous, sustainable, and harmonious societies. COVID has drawn attention to the critical need for more inclusive, efficient, and resilient education system around the world. In order to reduce learning losses from COVID and improve educational systems, inclusive system, sustainable financing, and integrated and mutually supportive governance are required. A multi-stakeholder approach to sustainable and blended financing is the game changer in the education sector. Let me give you a few words on blended finance and the Global Blended Finance Alliance, of which we are founding members. Blended finance has been defined as the strategic use of public finance for the mobilization of additional private finance towards sustainable development in developing countries. The THK roadmap has underlined the importance of creating a global system that enables greater movement of private funds to scale the delivery of the 2030 SDGs agenda. It is through engaging with a wide set of actors and building a worldwide community of support that blended finance can achieve its full potential. The Global Blended Finance Alliance is not envisioned as financing entity, but an aligner and voice of development to leverage the founding member countries and the strengths of the multi-stakeholder partners, catalyzing system shift outcomes in Indonesia, the region, island states, and the development world. In the words of our President Joko Widodo, the Indonesian government and Trihita Karana Forum envisage a global blended finance alliance for a better business, better world in Bali to scale up capacity building, policy research, and action labs for real solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, we have invited organizations today who are making a difference in the field of educational outreach, both to speak and to contribute to our roundtable discussions. The discussion will be recorded and uploaded to our website, and we hope you feel encouraged to upload the event to your own sites. We take this next step on the way to the G20 to ensure better and easier access to education for all school children with measurable outcomes and sustainable financing to ensure equal opportunity, global economic resilience, and through progress. THK stands for Trihita Karana, based on the three harmonies of ancient Bali: harmony between people, harmony with nature, and spiritual harmony. We believe education is the key to all of these things. May I wish a warm welcome to all. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends, wherever you are right now, I would like now to invite our first esteemed speaker. Nadiem Makarim has been Minister of Education, Culture, Research, and Technology for Indonesia since 2019, working to transform educational landscape. He recently launched the school digitization program, reaching students from across the country. Previously, he founded Gojek, Indonesia's first startup, valued over $10 billion. With Melinda Gates and the Minister of Finance of Indonesia, Sri Mulyani, Nadiem served as one of the commissioners of Pathways for Prosperity for Technology and Inclusive Development that focuses on helping developing countries to adapt with various new digital innovations that change the working culture.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to speak to all of you today in this very important event. I'm glad that we can have this forum to discuss one of the most pressing issues in the education world. How do we tackle the learning deficit through effective digital solutions? Being the Minister of Education with the fourth largest educational system in the world has been very challenging from the very first day. Yet, it is the bold mandate from the President, Joko Widodo, to transform human capital in Indonesia that keeps me and my team at the ministry here continuing to bring about fundamental changes to the country's educational system. In the past 3 years, we've embarked on the most radical transformation in Indonesian history in education. We named the campaign the Emancipated Learning Movement. We have this ambitious goal of reducing inequalities on access to quality learning among 60 million students in 300,000 schools across the archipelago, something that the conventional methods of education management has failed to achieve. Coming from a technology background myself, I always believe that the tech sector should contribute to the development of people's well-being, one of which is by supporting the transformation of education. Technology can just as easily increase inequality as it can decrease it. But the key towards successful school digitization is setting up the philosophy of user-centric design and developing products by listening to teachers, principals, listening to students, and focusing on what they need. For teachers, we've built the Emancipated Teaching Platform, which currently has over 2.3 million users and is among the top 5 education apps in Indonesia's Google Play Store. This platform supports the transition to the new curriculum by providing quality modules, downloadable completely for free. It also paves the way for a digital community of practitioners by allowing teachers to upload video and content that they've created to share their best practices with others. For principals, they are now allowed to automate the time-consuming work of budget planning and reporting by using an e-commerce platform for schools and a budget planning platform as well. They can see how their schools are performing on all dimensions of the national assessment through the school report platform, yet another platform that allows them to see where they are doing in terms of numeracy, literacy, as well as a large variety of other factors related to values and safety. Risks such as intolerance, sexual violence, and bullying are all measurable in the single app that reports to every school called the School Report Platform. For higher education students, we've created a digital marketplace for them to discover and enroll in off-campus opportunities, full semester programs that they can take 2 semesters in their entire undergraduate education off campus to do all kinds of activities, teaching at a school, doing an internship, studying a technology training course. By centralizing this function, students, and even in the most remote regions, get their chance to learn outside of their campus, experiencing life-changing project-based learning. We strongly believe that the most effective digital platforms unleash human potential in societies instead of replacing them. In Indonesia, we envision a bold new future in education, where digitization is driven by the strong call to emancipate learning for all children. Our ministry welcomes any external organizations that want to participate in Indonesia's effort to digitize our educational ecosystem. We cannot work alone to solve this huge challenge, so we would love to work with as many world-class institutions as possible. Thank you very much for all your time.
Thank you very much, Minister Nadiem, for your very insightful speech opening our sessions tonight. So without further ado, we would like to continue to the next speaker. She is the Executive Director of the Education Commission, chaired by former UK Prime Minister and UN Special Envoy for Global Education, Gordon Brown. She was director of the Commission's report, The Learning Generations. Under Lisbeth's leadership, the Commission has been at the forefront of the new thinking in educating financing, including IFFED, the Education Outcomes Fund, and greater share and better coordinating of external funding. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in making big welcome for the next speaker, Dr. Lisbeth Stier.
Thank you, Minister Makrim, for your remarks and your leadership to transform education in Indonesia and beyond. Thank you to the THK Forum and United in Diversity Foundation, President Tantowi Yahya and Sherry Nursalim, for inviting us to co-organize this event. Thank you everyone online for participating in this convening. It is timely and it is urgent. The world is facing multiple interconnected crises, the food, energy, debt and economic crisis all layered on top of the lingering COVID pandemic and of course the existential problem of climate change. But underneath all of this is another deep crisis, the silent pandemic, the global education crisis. The UN Secretary General warned that this crisis will have profound impacts for decades to come. It is unacceptable that close to 300 million children and young people are out of school today. It's also unacceptable, as the skills clock shows, that 70% of young people do not have the basic literacy and numeracy skills they need to thrive and navigate an increasingly complex world. That is a total of 840 million young people who will not be able to live up to their potential. At the same time, education systems are no longer fit for purpose. They do not deliver the skills that are needed for the rapidly changing world. Skills such as problem solving, critical thinking, and empathy. And the education workforce is poorly trained, undervalued and underpaid, and is held back by outdated methods. We must act now, not only because education is a human right, but also because it is the foundation to achieve all other SDGs. It drives economies, ensures healthy and harmonious societies, and reduces the great inequities of our time. There will be no sustained recovery without investments in education. The discussion today aims to identify new ideas to leverage blended finance for delivering digital learning at scale. I would like to highlight two specific ideas in this context. The first specific idea is about innovation in delivery through high-touch, high-tech. I want to recognize the Indonesian government's leadership in digital transformation, with digital literacy and skills as two major components in the national agenda. We need others to follow this leadership and invest in what works. One of the things we know works is adapting teaching to the level of each learner. This is one of the most effective ways to improve learning outcomes rapidly and increase equity. But to do this at scale, we must harness solutions that have been proven to work. This is why the Global Education Commission and its hub in Asia have been spearheading the High-Touch, High-Tech for All initiative. This initiative aims to deliver personalized learning at scale by combining the transformation of teaching and teachers, the high touch, with the power of AI-enabled adaptive technology, the high-tech. A prototype in Vietnam resulted in 2 years' worth of learning improvements in just 1 semester. But scaling this kind of innovation will require large-scale investments, will require overcoming the digital divide. We cannot accept that close to half of the world's population, 3.6 billion people, still live without internet access, many of them living in developing countries. But connectivity will not be enough. To make connectivity work for education, content must be developed, curated and localized to meet each country's needs. Teachers and facilitators must be trained to use new technologies, and investments must be made in data and analytics. Realizing the potential of digital technologies in education will require significant new finance. In this decade alone, an estimated $1.4 trillion will be needed to universalize digital learning. This must start with expanding domestic resources and spending those resources on evidence-based solutions. But innovative approaches to financing will be needed to plug the gap, especially in the short to medium term. This gets me to my second specific idea, an innovation in financing. The International Financing Facility for Education launched at the Transforming Education Summit this September in partnership with the Asian Development Bank and other regional development banks is a prime example of such an innovation. It brings public and private financiers together in new ways for maximum impact. We will hear more about this instrument later in the session. There are huge opportunities, but we must work together across all sectors, public and private, to explore how these blended financing tools can unlock learning for all. We cannot develop some of the potential of some people in some countries. We must develop all the potential of all people in all countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lisbeth Stier, for, again, it's very insightful speech that covers a lot of issues that will be discussed in the panels and roundtable discussions tonight. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I now take a great pleasure in passing you into the capable hands of our esteemed colleague, Shobila Walata, Associate Professor and Director of Academic Learning Programs of UID, who will moderate our 2 panels and lead the roundtable discussions. Shobi, back to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador, for helping us get the event off to a startling start. I believe the challenges and opportunities ahead of us have been well illuminated, and we hope today's roundtable and panels will help us align ourselves to meet these challenges. So we are now about to turn to our panels, which will subsequently be followed by the interactive part of today's program, the roundtable discussion. Before we do have two questions that we would like to put up to guide our participants' thoughts as we go along. We look forward to hearing your responses during the roundtable discussion, as well as your wider comments on how we can make real progress in tackling the education deficit through sustainable financing of the education sector, particularly IFED and blended finance. So if I can have the slides up with the questions, please. So the first one, what is your key takeaway from what you heard today on the big opportunities and for transforming education, and what obstacles need to be overcome? And you can share from either digital, finance, or other perspectives that you might have with you. Number two, what can you do to support and unlock education funding and blended finance, such as the IFED and the Global Blended Finance Alliance? And what, in your opinion, would be needed to achieve significant success? And there are other examples to draw from, for example, the climate health, or other examples that you may see fit if you wish. So these two questions will also be posted in the chat for your handy reference later, and we'll go back to them following the panels. So I take great pleasure in welcoming our esteemed panelists in our first panel discussion of today. This one is entitled "The Case for Digital Technology in Tackling the Education Deficit, Why Hybrid Learning Through Teachers and Technology Works." It is my great honor to call on our first panelist, Amy Bellinger, who is the Director of Programs for the Education Commission and a member of the Commission's leadership team. Amy established and is leading the Education Workforce Initiative and High Touch, High Tech Initiative. Amy, please take us away with you. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, everyone. We thank the THK Karana Forum and United in Diversity Foundation and the esteemed guests for the opportunity to present today. On behalf of the Education Commission and Education Commission Asia, spearheaded by our Commissioner, Professor Juho Lee, I'm delighted to share with you High Touch, High Tech for All. Evidence from the last 15 years shows that personalised learning approaches, such as teaching at the right level, that meet the child at the level that they're at, shows significant improvement in learning outcomes. High Touch, High Tech helps teachers to personalise their learning, personalise their teaching, and move away from delivering a standard lesson to all students at the same time, to providing a personalised lesson to each student at the right time. Many other areas of our life are now personalised. Why not in education? High Touch, High Tech is made up of two approaches: the high touch provided by teachers and the high tech provided by adaptive learning technology. With the use of artificial intelligence, adaptive learning technology can tailor instruction to individual student levels and needs. The teacher, who must be trained and equipped to harness the software, can then use the real-time data from the software to personalise their guidance to each student. They can then shift their teaching time to provide a much more active teaching and learning experience through facilitating project-based learning, problem solving with their students. And this allows them to develop much more higher order and 21st century skills. We prototyped this approach in Vietnam for grade 7 maths in partnership with Vietnam's Ministry of Education, Arizona State University, and the Vietnam National University. We provided teachers training and support to use the adaptive learning software. The prototype showed extremely promising results, and as Dr. Sear said, maths scores increased dramatically, showing learning gains equivalent to 2 years of learning within just one semester, with even greater gains for those students who were further behind, so really closing that learning deficit. Since then, our high touch, high tech work has expanded. We're piloting high touch, high tech in Uruguay with Plan Ceibal in 100 schools in both maths and computational thinking. We're delighted to say that other organizations are now also taking forward the high touch, high tech approach in Indonesia and Cambodia. And our work in South Korea is growing exponentially. Education Commission Asia has reached over 12,000 students and partnered with 100 organizations through the K-12, higher education, and EdTech consortia. These consortia convene and connect stakeholders to mobilize and catalyze the Korean ecosystem. Through this, we've really understood the importance of cross-sectoral partnerships and the need to catalyze the broader ecosystem. Financing is a critical part of this. Investment in digital learning approaches such as high touch, high tech, and the ecosystem needed for scale provide a variety of opportunities and interests for blended financing. Firstly, the learning outcomes are very measurable as technology assesses student learning on a regular basis, so impact can be very, very clearly shown. The software and hardware companies, internet providers, electricity providers, mobile phone providers, etc., are often private companies with a need for investment, in particular to develop those low-cost solutions that can reach the most marginalized. Catalyzing the ecosystem will lead to market growth, healthy competition, and product innovation. There is huge potential for scale if these digital learning solutions and approaches are rolled out across a country. And both social and business returns are possible. High touch, high tech will help learners develop the digital, STEM, and 21st century skills that they need to succeed in life. These social returns can directly translate to a business case for investment, developing both the economy and human capital while narrowing the digital and learning divide. So we are finding a lot of demand from other countries to expand this approach. And in Indonesia, in partnership with the Tanoto Foundation, we've been discussing the development of a high-touch, high-tech approach for pre-service teacher training to support the national agenda to innovate and support the teaching profession for 21st century demands. We have projects lined up in various other countries. That's all I'm going to say for now, and we're looking forward to the discussion on how blended finance can really help scale digital learning approaches. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. A very fascinating and a very promising approach, combining personalized education and teachers training technology. And hopefully we have the right people in the ecosystem tonight here to gain traction. So with that, I would also like to welcome with honor our second panelist, Bapak Arman Wiratmoko, who is the Senior Vice President of Corporate Strategy and Finance of Ruang Guru, the largest tech-enabled education provider in Southeast Asia. Pak Arman is also in charge of overseeing the company's finance operations and recently led fundraising rounds, which led to more than $200 million raised. Pak Arman, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, morning, and afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Arman. I'm currently Senior Vice President of Ruang Guru, the largest tech-enabled education provider in Southeast Asia. Ruang Guru was built 8 years ago, since 2014. So we've been operating for about 8 years. And what our vision is really to tackle the challenges that Indonesia is facing in terms of education, as well as human capital development. As we know, Indonesia is the 4th largest education system in the world, but unfortunately, we are one of the lowest performing as well compared to many other countries. On the other hand, as well, Indonesia also has the 2nd highest youth unemployment rate in Southeast Asia right now. So these are some of the big challenges that we're trying to solve when we built the company. There are 3 main areas that we want to target. One is on accessibility, so how we can improve access to quality education. using technology for all students anytime and anywhere. Second is on the quality of the content and the education content itself. So how can we provide high quality education service for everyone? And third is on employability. So not just from education perspective, but how we can make sure that we can empower youth to become more skilled and they can do well in the workforce. So some of the metrics here are things that we already achieved in the last 8 years. That we have more than 38 million users that have used our platforms across different products that we have, multiple products that we launch, multiple programs that we launch, and millions of users have benefited from our program that we've done so far. On the quality content itself, we create content, education content in the form of videos, skill courses, and so on. And when we put that into the app, and not just about the access, but we also see that our users feel the benefit of using our platform. More than 90% feels that our platform provides better, effective, and appealing learning methods that for the students in Indonesia. For employability, we also provide not just the skill courses, but we also prepare them in terms of work preparation. So they are taught about how to get a job, creating their CVs, how to position themselves, and so on. And from this program, we also see that we can help a lot of students, a lot of participants in order for them to. So these are the three areas that we focus in terms of the programs that we do at Ruang Guru. So what do we actually do? What is our product and services? In essence, there are two parts of the product that we have. Is that we want to combine high quality education contents with innovative technology for us to be able to provide an effective learning experience. So on the content side, we have our teachers, we have our experts that create the content in the form of videos, tests, exams, whatever, any kind of education materials, and we hire them. We make sure that our content is also in the best quality. At the same time, we try to also create the content that is age appropriate, that is engaging. So it's not just a simple boring lecture, but it can be interactive. It can be exciting for students to learn. For someone who's a children, then there will be more animation. For someone who's adult, then it'll be more straightforward and so on. On the other hand, we also try to use technology, and it's not just a simple library, but we want to use technology to make sure that the learning experience can also be engaging and also effective. We use artificial intelligence to help students to learn better. So based on their activities, based on their progress on the app, we can also provide recommendation. We can provide a multi-track learning path for them to learn better, as well as interactivity for students to be more engaged even when they're only learning online. There are multiple interactivity features. We give them gamification and so on for them to help learn more effectively and more engaging way. So these are two components. As an education technology, we try to combine the education part, but also the technology part. So right now, Ruang Guru has products and services that encompass the lifelong learning journey. Okay. Yeah, so I think we can discuss more on the Q&A. Yeah, just one last question. So one last point. I think for us as a company, we now have products across the lifelong learning journey, from school age to lifelong learning process. We have more than 38 million users, and for us, we are fortunate enough to have investors that have backed us over the years, and some of the accolades that we also get from the best global edtech to the most innovative companies, and we strive to grow our business and our organization even bigger. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pa Arman. I think very exciting to have the presence of Ruang Guru as edtech solution, and we look forward to learning more how we can create measurable outcomes through technology in the learning attainments of participants. So our next panelist, Dr. David Bish, is an educator with over 30 years experience as a university lecturer, school teacher, teacher trainer, director of studies, and materials writer. David has worked at Education First for 20 years, developing teaching materials, software, and testing and training programs. A passionate edtech speaker, David is a regular presenter at international conferences such as IATFL, Eurocall, and TEDx, while he has twice made the finals of the British Council Elton's Award for Innovation in Teaching. David, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that excellent introduction. That saved me a lot of speaking there. Well, good day, Your Excellency, ministers and participants to the forum. Thank you very much for having us here to speak. As you heard, my name is Dr. David Bish from EF Education First. If you're in Indonesia, I'm sure you'll be very familiar with our bricks and mortar schools, which are across Indonesia. But EF is also the world's largest educational organization, and we are very heavily involved in online and remote teaching around the world. And I'll try and give you a few examples of these. I don't have a slideshow presentation today for you because I don't feel that we EF are bidding or have something to sell at this point. We just have to offer our expertise. As I said, we're the world's largest private education company, but we're also a family-owned company and very much owned by a company who cares, with a mission to open doors through education, which very much resonates with the UN 2030 goals of access to education, addressing learning poverty, as we heard already, and learning loss from the pandemic. So I want to give you a couple of things that we've been doing that may interest in questions later on, and show how we can contribute expertise and insight, especially as you're coming from, it seems like, tens of thousands of learners and wanting to scale that right up to millions of learners, such as we have in our project in Brazil right now, millions of school-age learners on a project not dissimilar to this. So we've been teaching online for over 20 years now. So we've had remote teaching. I was a remote online teacher for EF in 2001. So we've got a lot of experience. We began leveraging the internet to reach people as soon as that was possible, taking our CD-ROM based school onto the internet and pushing it out there through remote classes for one-to-one learning, group learning, and also for computer-based courseware, as people have already mentioned. So we actually then made the leap to mobile-assisted language learning, providing even greater access pretty much as soon as the iPad came out in 2010. But we found straight away, as we were trying to do this with confines of our own schools worldwide, in countries across the globe, we expected students very quickly, and these are students in, I must say, quite high-end schools, students who were paying for travel abroad sometimes, or well-off students. Not all of the students we're trying to reach right now, but well-off students in these countries. And we built a bring your own device model back then. And the access to the technology was far, far lighter than we had anticipated. So we had to create a model where we provided the devices and we looked after, we provisioned the devices. We actually had to work with Apple right then. We had to be pioneers in mobile provisioning. We had to pioneer bulk charging and maintenance of devices so we could deliver them in classes. And I must say 10 years later, that problem hasn't entirely gone away. In a collaboration we have in Rwanda at the moment, where we're training people in the service sector, we have learners who still don't have access to mobiles, except this time the situation is down to the amount of money that they have, the access to networks and so on. So there we're working with things like local coffee shops, telecoms providers to provide loaning. And even though many of our students are self-employed and don't go to an office and work somewhere where they get access to technology, we're building up loaning programs within other large institutions that are using the technology for in-house. So we're looking at different ways we can get the devices out there and we can get the technology out there. We already heard that our solutions have won 3 times the Eltons Award, so I won't dwell on that. But I think really the last point to make before we move on for time is the fact that we have been focusing on scalability between offering online courseware, which we can deliver at scale across, and as we heard, the sort of high touch end, the high tech end of things, where we can define individuals, people's needs. And here we are offering, for example, I hope you can see my Ukrainian badge here, 185,000 civil servants from the country of Ukraine are currently about to start enjoying free learning for us, free English access through mobile devices through a free app. And one of the main advantages of this for Ukraine in a time where getting access to any kind of learning is rather difficult because there are places you can't go, the places you can't be, the population is very fragmented, but this
David?
gives centralized tracking and control and measurability.
We are
I'm
at
very
time.
happy to stop there and pass on if you like, and I hope my colleague Duval later in the presentation would be very happy to share you some of the kind of statistics that we have to demonstrate return on investment and access to education through these programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's quite illuminating to learn about education's first trailblazing pre-pandemic about how to deliver these high-touch, high-tech approach and how we can learn more about the measurable outcomes in the roundtable discussion. So thank you so much. I wish we had all day to learn from our very wonderful experiences of our panelists, but we do have to wrap up this panel. And we are now ready to move on to our second panel. Thank you to our panelists. So I take great pleasure in introducing and welcoming our second panel, focusing on how to mobilize finance to create measurable change through IFED, blended finance, and other financing vehicles. To open the panel, I would like to call upon the esteemed Insinyur Brahmantio Istioso, Directorate of Government Support Management and Infrastructure Financing from the Ministry of Finance. Pak Brahmantio, to deliver the keynote speech. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening to all of you. I wish you all good health and conditions. First, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Brahmantio Istioso, Director of Government Support and Infrastructure Financing Management. I would like to convey Pak Luki apology for being unable to join today's discussion. So please allow me to share his message. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera, Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. It's an honor for me to be here today to deliver remarks on the session of mobilizing blended finance and other financing instruments to catalyze frontier innovations in education. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, we knew increased digitalization could have transformative economic results. A 2016 study found that widespread adoption of the digital finance would increase the GDP of all emerging economies by 6%, or a total $3.7 trillion by 2025. Creating 95 million new jobs. Then the COVID-19 pandemic hit, and we also show digital connectivity is key economic resilience as learning and work was undertaken at home. This proven with the increasing internet traffic by 30% worldwide and also increase in internet access. In 2021, we showed the share of the world's population with the access of the internet grew 63%. In fact, it is a turning point that indeed citizens are increasing common with the use of the internet as well as a new features digitalization, including for educations. COVID pandemic has also had unprecedented massive adverse effect on the many sectors, including infrastructures. It's disrupted the investment flow into infrastructures as government necessarily diverted their resources to protect the life of the citizens. As such, it's a highlight the ongoing importance of development partners and private sector to work collaboratively with the government to close infrastructure financing gaps. One of the initiatives to involve the private sectors as well as creative financing schemes that have been developed and implemented is the PPP scheme. The PPP scheme was launched in 2005 and has come a long way to arrive at solid framework as today. Beyond PPP, we also promote blended finance schemes. This is expected to find optimal financial structure that combines several funding sources from governments, private sectors, donors, and philanthropists. To promote blended finance, we established a blended finance platform called SDG Indonesian 1 or SIO that focus on financing projects which support the SDG achievement. The platform is aimed at accelerating the implementation of blended finance, as well as a pool of funds from potential lenders, investors, development banks, donors, and philanthropists. It was established in 2018 under the management of PT Sarana Multi Infrastructure, and so far it has shown significant progress by successfully reaching commitment from 34 partners amounting to $3.19 billion US, which 934 million reached an agreement and 227 million has been disbursed. The service include providing SDG financing facility, SDG development facility, SDG de-risking facility, and SDG equity fund. In years of Indonesia experience in education infrastructures, to be specific, public infrastructure in education, there are very few cases that demonstrate the private participations. We believe there are enormous potential benefit from collaborating with the private sector, development partners, and other stakeholders in the development of blended finance to be implemented in the infrastructure projects. And today, I would be very keen to listen to the discussion how blended finance may work to infrastructure projects, including in the context of education sector. I will stop here. Thank you and have a fruitful discussions. Again, let me thank you for allowing us to join this important discussion representing Pak Luki. We believe the discussion will contribute to our better future education. Thank you.
Thank you for your presence, Pak Bram, and we are also grateful for the ministry's support for this finance innovation that will hopefully allow us to really truly reach sustainable development through financing instruments. Thank you, Pak. So I would like to continue our panel by inviting our second panelist, Ibu Nina Stoknyol, is the head of innovative finance for the Education Commission and is leading the Education Commission's efforts to launch and operationalize the International Finance Facility for Education, or IFED, as we have been referring to it all evening, this evening. So Nina has over 15 years of strategy, finance, and delivery experience in emerging markets, spanning both the private and public sectors. Nina will be starting her piece with the introductory video to IFED.
What if millions of children and young people like Arya were given a better chance? The International Finance Facility for Education is a game changer. IFED multiplies donor resources so countries can make investments in education and skills for the economy of tomorrow. We are on a mission to reclaim the future for young people. Learning is the engine that powers everyone's future. That's why the learning and skills crisis impacts us all. IFED creates 7 times more impact for donor dollars compared with traditional aid. With access to affordable finance, countries can make investments without burdens for the future. We'll close the gap where it matters most. by turning millions into billions without trade-offs or extra resources, and innovating at pace to support country-owned learning programs. Now is the time to join a collaborative network that can achieve ambitious development goals. All we need is your investment in the future. IFED, a generation of possibilities.
Thank you, Shobi. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I want to start by thanking the THK Forum and the United in Diversity Foundation for bringing us all together, to Pak Idioso for kicking off this session, and to all of you in Indonesia and wherever you are online today for joining us. With multiple global crises raging and budgets increasingly squeezed everywhere, we really have no choice but to think outside the box and work together if we're going to tackle the 200 billion plus annual education financing and skills and financing gap. The International Finance Facility for Education, or IFED, which launched at the UN Transforming Education Summit in New York last month, does exactly that. IFED is a partnership between sovereign and philanthropic funders, multilateral development banks, and lower middle income countries to radically multiply development financing and unlock public investment in education and skills. IFED is groundbreaking for several reasons. First, it does what this session is all about. It blends public and private financing. Secondly, it's the first facility that really specifically targets lower middle income countries. And we all know this is where the majority of children and youth live today. And it's also where 80% of the education and skills financing gap is projected to be by 2030. Finally, IFED not only provides an unbeatable multiplier for funding, which was already referenced in the video, but it also makes financing more affordable for countries, which in turn is what will allow them to unlock and scale investments. So IFED's launch last month was the outcome of several years of work by the Education Commission and a core coalition of donors, including the UK and Sweden, several philanthropists, such as the Rockefeller and Atlassian Foundation, as well as our MDB partners, including the Asian and African development banks. So how exactly does IFED work? First, what IFED does is it collects sovereign guarantees and grants from public, philanthropic, and private actors. It then provides portfolio guarantees to its MDB partners, which use those guarantees to raise financing on the capital markets. IFED's portfolio guarantee model is extremely efficient because donors only need to pay in 15 cents for every $1 of guarantee. But each dollar of the guarantee can be used by the banks to raise up to $4 in funding. And that's really where IFED's magic, or if you want to use the technical term, leverage lies. Because with only 15 cents of cash, IFED can unlock $4 to invest in education and skills projects, which is a staggering 27 times more than the cash you need to pay in. But if it doesn't stop there, it's not just about multiplying scarce resources, which is critical at this time. It's also about making that financing more affordable to countries, which is why using grants from public, philanthropic, and private donors, what IFED will do is provide at least $10 in grants for every $100 of MDB loans. It thereby will reduce the loan interest rate and make it feasible for governments to borrow sustainably. For countries, the result is long-term low-interest loans. I'll try and wrap it up quickly. Long-term low-interest loans. For funders, it's an unbelievable 7 times multiple across the guarantee and grants combined. For MDBs, it's new and dedicated capital to scale their investments in education. And for children and young people, it's access to more and better opportunities. And that's really why the model is already being looked at to be copied in other sectors, including climate and health, and why the G20 has identified it as a key innovation in its review of MDB financing. I'm going to say one final thing, which is that IFED will unlock $2 billion of financing in 2023, and it's going to focus on Asia and Africa in its first 2 years, after which it will expand globally and scale to 10 billion by 2030. Thank you very much for being with us today. I'll stop it there, but happy to take any questions on IFED later.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nina. I think very, very exciting what IFED has initiated. Definitely heading in the right direction, but we need more of it, right? And so with that, it is my great pleasure to welcome an important actor in this field, Mr. Woo Chung-um, who has been the Asian Development Bank's Managing Director General since February 2021, who is responsible for ensuring the bank's wide coherence on key initiatives and issues, and provides oversight to the Department of Communications, the Office of Professional Conduct, and the Office of the Ombudsperson. And the ADB, in collaboration with the African Development Bank, will help develop IFED in the Asian and African region, as mentioned by Nina, before it expands globally. So, Mr. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm honored to represent the Asian Development Bank at this special event today. It underscores the importance of developing an innovative financing in response to the massive learning and earning losses caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. In some areas, such as the rapid vaccine delivery, the global community demonstrated significant agility in responding to the health crisis unleashed by the pandemic. Without such agility and responsiveness, the world would not be on the road to recovery as we are on today. Similar efforts are needed to respond to learning and earning losses. Unfortunately, funding for education has not increased at the magnitude required to address this global learning loss challenge. At the same time, we continue to see important investments like education being crowded out by other competing priorities. The International Finance Facility for Education, IFID, is coming at a critical juncture. It is dedicated to address the huge needs of lower and middle-income countries that are home to 700 million children in need of urgent help. To turn the learning crisis into a learning opportunity, it is urgent to test the proof of concept that IFID proposes to address this at scale. This requires scaling donor investments and domestic financing education in a sustainable way. IFID's approach to blend loans with grants is necessary to make global financing attractive to eligible lower middle-income countries that face the biggest funding gaps. IFID has the potential to provide a global platform for interested donors, multilateral development banks, and eligible lower middle-income countries to catalyze innovative financing and to transform learning and skills development for those that need the most. At the Asian Development Bank, we are also aiming to expand our education operation from the current 5% of our total investment to about 10% by 2024. Blended financing from IFID will help us progress towards our goals. We have many examples of how digital learning requires a holistic approach through whole-of-government collaboration and integration to transform teaching and learning. This requires time to test, improvise, and scale up in affordable and sustainable ways. If it can transform the way we deliver education outcomes, so we need to deploy IFID resources rapidly. The good news is that the process of developing and finalizing the IFID model has been highly collaborative. We now need to finalize the remaining work and collaborate with the beneficiary government, in particular, to design projects and programs that respond to their learning needs at scale. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. The ADB, I believe, is playing a great role in furthering this blended finance effort, as is philanthropic funds. And it is my pleasure then to welcome our next panelist, Ms. Sharon Ko, who is the Director of Knowledge and Strategy, Philanthropy Asia Alliance of the Temasek Trust. Established by Temasek Holdings in 2007, Temasek Trust is a steward of philanthropic endowments and gifts from Temasek and other donors, and it strives to deliver sustainable funding for the long-term well-being and security of our community. Ms. Ko, the floor is yours.
It is clear that even as the COVID-19 pandemic ebbs, the outlook for the coming years remains challenging for Asia and indeed the rest of the world. The challenges we face are individually complex, but also interlinked, from geopolitical instability to climate change, to economic stagnation, to learning losses, and widened social inequalities. The last few years have been difficult, but they have also shone a light on the collective resolve and action of governments, businesses, the social sector, and individuals to step up and do good. Life has started to normalize, businesses are recovering, and communities are rebuilding, but much more needs to be done. We must continue to harness our collective resolve to close education gaps, address our healthcare needs, and protect our planet. When it comes to financing good work, we strongly believe that the tripartite collaborations between public, private, and philanthropic institutions are needed using models like blended finance. No one can solve the problems of today and tomorrow on their own. We must work together. There is still an annual $4 trillion financial gap to deliver the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The philanthropic sector can bring flexibility and agility to pilot new solutions. For example, at our summit this year, we showcased an innovative income share agreement model to enhance higher education accessibility for students in need. The ambition of the idea being tested is to ensure that every young person has access to a bright future by addressing the financial barriers to tertiary education. While we may start with philanthropic capital, driving the initiation of projects like these, the aim is really to work towards crowding in private sector funding as the proof of concepts emerge and the solutions become investable. The private sector can then bring its commercial discipline to develop and drive sustainable processes and outcomes. And when the solutions mature, the public sector can provide leadership to scale impact at national and international levels. The public sector can also develop the policies and incentives to allow further innovation and new models of partnerships between the philanthropic, private, and public sectors to thrive. This is how we can do well and do right together. The initiation of the Philanthropy Asia Alliance was announced at the Philanthropy Asia Summit this year. The alliance will provide a more sustainable and integrated approach to catalyzing collective action to tackle pressing environmental and societal challenges in Asia and beyond. We need new financial models to enhance our impact and complement traditional checkbook philanthropy. For example, Temasek Trust and Temasek Foundation are both involved in programs that are using a blended finance model called Pay for Success to support education and employment programs that are targeted at diverse communities, from low-income families to people on the autism spectrum. Pay for Success agreements are a way to stimulate innovation in addressing complex social issues that maximize the outcomes of government, private, and philanthropic dollars by ensuring that every dollar is spent on demonstrated impact. In a typical Pay for Success model, an upfront funder will come in to provide the initial funds to the service provider to run the programs directly with the beneficiaries. An independent evaluator or auditor will then measure the results of the program against pre-specified impact outcome metrics. Outcome funders make an advance commitment of funds that are paid out only when the pre-agreed targets are achieved. When the outcome funds are paid out, this allows for the recycling of the initial funds to either be redeployed to other projects or to extend the existing program to more beneficiaries. The ongoing data feedback loop benefits all parties involved to be empowered to make data-driven fund allocation decisions and has the potential to crowd in new funders who can assess the quantified results of the programs. These are just some examples of what we are working on, and we believe that developing and refining these new kinds of philanthropic models will foster different ways of collaboration, bring fresh source of funds, and ultimately lead to better programs that can extend our impact. In the months ahead, we look forward to forming deeper partnerships that galvanize collective resolve, combine our strengths, and to find comprehensive solutions to the complex challenges we face. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ko. I think it's a very fascinating model that you have initiated, Pay for Success, and continuing data feedback loop to ensure that we are on the right track and incentivizing the right outcomes. So the last piece to the Splendid Finance perspective that we are having tonight is being brought by Mr. Sandeep Aneja, who is the founder and managing partner of Kaizen Vest, an education-focused fund management firm headquartered in Singapore. Kaizen Vest has established itself as the only education sector-focused fund manager with private equity and private debt funds across South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa. Sandeep sits on the board of various education companies across the Philippines, Vietnam, and India. Sandeep, without further ado, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. This is Sandeep Aneja. I am representing Kaizen Vest, which is an education-focused investment firm. Investments are in Asia and Africa. We've been around for the last 11 years, and we've seen numerous ups and downs in the sector. Particularly the last 3 years have been quite transformative, even for us. We've been at the very forefront of innovating and looking at innovative solutions and funding innovative solutions. Innovations occurring in technology, in pedagogy, and in the financial ecosystem that supports the education sector. So we've made about 18 investments, and we've worked closely with entrepreneurs in building companies with them. And also, as we have progressed in our own journey, we've come to realize the importance that education has globally, and particularly in emerging markets, in transforming societies, in bringing sustainable change to various aspects of societies, which are often left untouched. So I would like to talk about today the importance of the role of the public sector and the private sector working together in bringing transformation, sustainable transformation to this particular sector, which at SDG 4 level is right at the center of what can be done and what is often done to change lives from a gender perspective, from economic opportunity perspective, even driving climate change by educating people about the importance of climate change. So that's nexus of the various social elements, social problems of society, which is very hard to untangle, which is entirely deeply intertwined, exists, and it has to be understood. And one of the ways of solving for it is by solving through education. Is it easy for one to tell whether gender inequalities are exacerbated by the lack of education, or the cause is the lack of education and the effect is the gender inequalities, or vice versa? It's really hard to pinpoint that in particularly deep social situations. So the only thing as investors we can do, and as people who work with the public sector we can do, is to ensure that we target these problems. By targeting these problems, we will have a solution that will be hopefully sustainable and bring impact. So what can the two sectors do? The public sector has the obvious advantage of its reach and also the long-term goal setting, but both are weaknesses for the private sector, which has the strength of innovation and also has the ability to support the public sector through those innovations. It is vital that the two segments work together strategically and not opportunistically, with one main objective. There can be multiple objectives, but it'll be much simpler if there was one single shared main objective of that of bringing sustainable change to education sector and making it more accessible to the entire society so that it can be transformative. It is possible, left alone to the private sector's means, that a lot of the change will occur, but it could be disruptive, it could be sudden. Sectors like education change slowly. And while innovations are essential, those innovations that do not ultimately solve the larger problems, the big denominator problems, they will not reform the issues that we face today. The private sector has the advantage of working with the public sector in bringing these innovations, from technological innovations to financial innovations, and working with the sector in bringing those to the forefront of change of society itself. The private sector operates in financial terms across the board with various colors of capital, from grants to affordable credit, to blended finance, to venture capital, private equity, and more. Different capital types support different stages of problems, and thoughtfully done, targeted problems can be solved much better by these different kinds of capital. It is imperative that the public sector and the private sector find a method by which different types of capital can be brought to bear to solve different types of solutions, different types of problems. Given the possibility that lies ahead of us, I would urge all of us to look at options to bring more innovation to the masses in partnership with the public sector, particularly those innovators who believe that solving for maybe a few thousand people is enough when the problem really afflicts millions of people. I appreciate the time and I appreciate the opportunity to be presenting this and look forward to learning more about all that goes on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. Very admirable what you are doing with Kaizenvest, and I think we should learn more from these examples. And that has concluded our 2 panels of discussion, and we are now ready to enter into the following, the interactive portion of tonight's event, which is the roundtable. Just as a reminder, this is not technically not a Q&A per se, so we're not only welcoming your questions to the panelists, but we are very much looking forward to hearing your own thoughts and perspectives into the matters. You might recall the 2 questions that I posed earlier on what might you see are the key opportunities, what are the takeaways that you're getting, what obstacles that need to be overcome, how might you support unlocking these financing instruments for education, and what do we need to achieve success? So among other things that you might want to bring into the conversation, I would now like to open the floor for discussion. If you do have something to add to the discussion, please do use the raise hand feature. If you do have a question, on the other hand, please kindly post them to my colleague, Ms. Alex Duff, ALIXDUFF, through private, and she will be pulling those questions for later. So the raise hand button, I see Mr. Duval has raised your hand. Go ahead, Duval.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Sorry, my voice is a little weird because I'm a little sick, but it's been a pleasure listening to everyone, learning from all of you, and actually seeing that we are all on the right track and thinking along the same lines in terms of the importance of technology and personalized learning in order to, bridge the gap of education that we have. I actually would like to compliment my colleague David Bish here with some data of 2 projects we have ongoing here in Brazil that I believe will shed some light on the discussion here. We are basically using technology in the public education system to help public school students and their English teachers learn English in an individualized way. So if you allow me, I will promise I'll be very, very brief. I have only 4 or 5 slides here just to show some data there, if I may. 1 second here. Please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. Just pull this up. All right. So basically, we have a project in the state of Paraná and the state of Mato Grosso. Altogether, we actually have more than 1 million students enrolled. Like I said, all public school students and their teachers. And I'll get to the point of the teachers in a second. They've already studied 11 million lessons just this academic year, which in Brazil starts in February. Lessons here is actually a set of activities that includes all 4 skills of language learning. And that includes speaking through voice recognition and artificial intelligence, for example, and over 5 million hours. And these numbers keep increasing every week as we go on throughout the year. This is a curve of monthly engagement. We actually chose 2 KPIs to follow. One is access. Are they accessing the platform? And this is the curve for students' engagement in terms of access to the platform month to month. And we actually already achieved 88% of them from February to September of this year. And this is how we have ramped up. I'll get to how they use it in a second as well. And the other KPI is actually lessons studied. So actually not only going into this, the platform, but also actually getting studies completed. And this is the curve of millions of lessons finished. And they cannot really finish the lesson without actually learning, because if they fail, they have to repeat it over again. It's at the 70% accuracy at least. And here's the main thing that I talked about teachers. What we have learned is that actually from 75 to 80% of public school English teachers, and I'm saying about Brazil, and I think that many of you might relate this to your own countries, actually have an English level proficiency below B1. And that's quite critical. It means we have teachers that have not themselves had the chance to learn proper English, being tasked to teach. So we also have to give them teacher training on, improving their own proficiency level, while also giving the students a tool to work on the side. So we're doing that, together. And this is a chart that shows proficiency progress of students in 6 months. So the red bar is basically where we were. The numbers are the EF levels, but at the bottom you can see CEFR levels. So basically, just as a core example, 80% of the students, and this is the case of Paraná, were at the A1 level when we started in February, and we have already reduced that by about 5% in 6 months. And that curve starts to go moving to the right as we continue with the project. So this is also an example of how we are also keeping track of actual language learning and not only engagement and lessons completed. And finally, this is how we are using it. So basically, they use it in class. So instead of using their textbooks, each school has a minimum number of computers that they rotate among the teachers. They don't have to have a computer for every student, although that would be ideal. So they've actually been rotating that. They will either take the students to the computer lab or bring the computers to classroom. And if they will, they can also use their mobiles, where the platform is actually also available offline, which reduces the issue of connectivity that we also have discussed. And this allows them all to have individualized learning, as we were talking here earlier today. And most importantly, I think it gives teachers a chance to give more quality time to the students who need them the most. And every single week, we basically report to the government partners on the number of activities completed, and the teachers also have a BI report where they see how their students are doing, and they start to grade their students based on progress, regardless of whether.
Deval, sorry, time. I think we have a couple of more hands up. Maybe one last sentence, or are you ready?
No, I'm finished. This was my last slide. So thank you very much. So just wanted to share
All
that.
right, thank you so much. Very interesting metrics that you are using to show actual attainment, not just time on the platform. Thank you. I have Professor Roger Jones. You have your hand up. Go ahead, Professor.
Thank you very much. A fascinating seminar. I'm speaking as a medical educator from the UK, and to hear the scale of the learning and earning deficit that you've described is really quite mind-blowing, actually. What I'm interested in asking, I'm not quite sure who would answer the question, to some of the participants, is how is the curriculum content determined? We've heard a lot about the hardware, if you like, but clearly there are all sorts of opportunities in terms of the SDGs, healthcare, and basic life skills that could be woven into the curricula. What's the interface between these technological innovations and learning needs in the various sites in which they're used?
So perhaps no coincidence that we have Pa Arman up next, who's actually from one of the EdTech providers. Maybe Pa Arman, aside from bringing in your further perspective, can also comment on how you decide on the curriculum.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, I think I can try to share some of those perspectives, right? I think so in Indonesia, the curriculum that we use, we follow the curriculum of the schools. So the products that we have, we still follow the curriculum of the school. But I think like given that we have the technology, also we try to put innovation to it. We try to repackage it so that it can be relevant when you start to learn online. Um, I think that the curriculum part is also why we also hire the teachers. So because we can use technology, we can basically what we're trying to do is that we can hire the good quality teachers or the good quality subject matter experts in the big cities, right? Like in Jakarta, and they are the one who help us to develop the curriculum, so that we can provide that curriculum to the students across the Indonesia. So then basically we can, because basically in Indonesia, the challenge is that the quality of education is not the same between the big cities and the smaller cities, between Java Islands and the other islands. And that's how we try to bridge the gap by using and like developing the curriculum that is in good quality and in terms of content, and then we deliver it through technology across the different archipelago. And we also see the similar experience because we also expanded actually into other countries in Vietnam and Thailand. Then we need to relook into how we create the curriculum that is applicable to those countries as well. So that because the way they learn, the way they usually the students' behavior, teacher behavior, also different for each of the different regions. And so in that sense, then we also need to customize the curriculum to those respective regions. However, I think the technology part helps us to be able to see the features that can help the students to learn better. So the curriculum is just the content, right? The education content, but then the technology helps to deliver that in a more efficient way. So that, I think that's my comment on how we connect the curriculum part to the hardware, so-called the hardware technology part. I think I also want to add up some points, some perspectives in terms of edtech in general, especially in Indonesia. I think what we've seen is that education technology and digital learning in Indonesia is still in relatively early phase. I think if we compare in other developing countries like in India or in China, definitely the adoption of digital learning, online learning is much faster there. So we are probably a few years behind. Yes, COVID helped us to accelerate that adoption, but it has been actually more challenging because people are not used to like online learning prior to COVID, right? Even the COVID actually only emphasize that during COVID, actually, we see that there are actually struggles because we are not so prepared. The teachers are not prepared in doing online learning. The schools are not prepared. The students are not prepared. And so what it caused is that even after COVID, the challenge is that the students, or even like there's also a negative sentiment towards online learning now because people see like, oh, online learning is not effective. And so that's why like as a player here, I think one of the biggest challenges, but also an opportunity is that for us to continue educate the market and also continue to innovate to see like what kind of solutions may work for the current market that we have. And related to the financing part, I think I want to try to connect the dots here on the financing part. As an edtech player, I think the biggest challenge for us is that we are more often seen as a technology player. So we will be compared against e-commerce. We will be compared against fintechs because the investors that will invest in us is also like the same type of investors, the venture capitals, the private equity, and so on. But I think as mentioned in the discussions earlier is that education's progress is slower, right? So the impact may not be immediate like tomorrow. There will be education to the market. We need to educate the market on how to use the products and so on. So that becomes sometimes can be a challenging level. We need to balance both the impact side, but also on the commercial side, because then, then we will not be as, our business is not the same as like, growing e-commerce. And I think like edtech in Indonesia, especially, the edtech investments have been quite far behind if we compare to other technology sectors like fintechs or as well as like e-commerces or even ride hailing, right? So I think that's how we see this can be a challenge here as a company in Indonesia on how we can continue sustainably, like growing sustainably and continue to innovate in the country. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Pak Ahmad. I think you highlighted two very important points here. One is that we also need, it's not just providing software and gadgets or devices, but you also need to work with the teachers in the schools and the students' learning habits to really get to that attainment that you need before we really ready to measure the impact. And then on that note too, how to balance the actual learning impact with the capital return that is expected out of edtech companies. So with that, may I invite Julie Curry? I believe you have your hand up.
Oh, thank you very much. I hugely admire your program and objectives, and from what I've seen, it's hugely set up for success. So my background is UK social investment market, blended finance market, etc. I worked with foundations and social investment funds for a number of years, social enterprises, etc., to develop security and sustainability for the social enterprise sector, and also successfully sought funding and blended finance for a distance learning program in Australia, although a much smaller one, which is still successful today. One of the key challenges I think the UK sector, social investment sector, has found is the ability to generate strong management information and governance to produce the quality outcomes that are required, the outcomes measurement that are required by governments, charitable foundations, and corporate organisations to get confidence in the investment that they make, and also for regulatory bodies that cover corporate companies who might want to use the data in their financial presentations or just general presentations for their ongoing investment or for use in the ECG sector. So I guess my question is really, would you expand on how you feel about the program and the sector's approach to ensuring that quality outcome management information and governance is sought, and also perhaps an opportunity, or is potentially an opportunity to strengthen this and for the future, securing future funding going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Curry. May I invite, I think it might be interesting to bring in some of our IFED counterparts to respond to some of the questions on financing and also on the curriculum earlier before we get to our next hand raised. Nina, maybe?
Sorry, I'm having some technical issues, so I actually just missed a little bit of the question. But at the top level, I think what we've said, I mean, we've talked about that we need more financing. It needs to be more affordable. We need to make sure it secures educational outcomes, but also sort of, I think, heard that we need to have the data underlying that it works. For IFED, we're working very hard with sort of the MDBs in order to set an overarching results framework that really does focus on the most vulnerable and marginalized children, and we will be sort of using the development partners approaches, but also trying to enhance them in order to try and track and measure those results. And actually, this is where what's been interesting is, in a way, I think what we found is that state donors, so government donors, are a little bit more comfortable, I would say, maybe overstepping the mark here, with kind of handing things over to the MDBs in order to manage. But it's actually the philanthropists that we're working with that are really interested in, okay, how do we make sure this really secures the results that we want to see, both sort of at the project level, but also at the macro level. So this is certainly something we're thinking about and looking actually for ideas on as part of the work in sort of making MDBs work better and differently as they scale investment.
Thank you. That is might be one of our key kind of homework, to figure out the governance and how we can work around these different streams of financing to ensure the right standards of attainment is achieved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nina. David, you have your hand up.
Thank you very much. I just really wanted, I thought it was an excellent question on curriculum, kind of where does the curriculum come from? Because I think that raises questions about applicability, sustainability, and which then leads to appropriate outcomes, which of course can be measured and lead us back to the showing return on investment financial model. I think where EF has worked with curricula internationally before, what we've made sure to do is look at the existing schools curriculums across countries, and then build a kind of a meta curriculum with meta content that is applicable in different places, that can be accessed at different levels. I think it's very important that there's both a sort of a governmental level of access of the curriculum that you expect to maybe figure in external exams or what's required for going on to college and things like that. But then also, I think very strongly that you need to empower teachers to be able to select more of a local sort of school-facing curriculum that deals with sort of sequencing of what they're doing right now, maybe what the students have done in other types of classes, the kind of remedial learning that they maybe have had to done with different groups and so on. So that you need to empower the teachers very much to select a kind of micro curriculum at local level that supports the kind of learning they want to see. And I think this also empowers teachers and makes them part of the equation. I think one danger, and it's been mentioned a couple of times here, with using a kind of remote edtech solution or something that's powered by the AI, making decisions on learning pathways for individual students. This can very much disenfranchise the teacher and remove them from the teaching equation, and sort of disempower them for other things that they need to do with young students in their learning as they're building their, say, kind of life skills and their soft skills and their teamwork, collaboration, and all these things. So I think any kind of tech platform solution here needs to offer a way for, I suppose, redundancy in a large scale curriculum that can be then tailored down and sequenced how it fits, with obviously with advice and guidance, but how it fits a local teacher in a local school scenario, but still lead to evidence of learning and outcomes taking through. That's kind of all I want.
Thank you so much, David. Indeed, I think very important to kind of put a highlighter on it and then underline it, the importance of having our teachers and work with the high-tech approach, which is perfect that an Amy has a hand up. Go ahead, Amy.
Thank you. Sorry, I just wanted to add a couple of comments to both of these questions. So firstly, on the curriculum, we've done some recent work actually in Africa on to what extent government policies and curriculums reflect more 21st century skills and kind of innovation and engaging approaches. And what we found is that the policy and the curriculum actually sets out these things very clearly, but the real challenge is how do you implement that at the classroom level? And that's where I think some of these tools to supplement teachers that can collect data on how students are doing against the curriculum, and most of these technologies can be mapped to specific country curriculums. That allows both the individual teacher to see how the student is doing, but also that data can actually be collected and shared at kind of ministry government level so that they can see overall across all their students, how are students doing against the curriculum. And as I think it was Education First mentioned, teachers in Vietnam, actually, we also, our teachers also took the adaptive learning technology, and that also gave us an understanding of how teachers' proficiency was and where there were gaps. So again, that could be applied if new curriculum is being introduced into schools or systems. If the teacher's take an initial knowledge check, then systems can know how to respond. So I just wanted to make that point, and also fully support this need for more data and evidence on different technological approaches, because really it's the effective ones that have the most potential for impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy. And that would also allow us to adjust and adapt, as Arman put it, adaptive solutions that really tailor to the market that we want to intervene in. Yeah. I would like to call on, this is not a hand, but we have Professor Stella Christ from Tsinghua Brain Institute. Professor, we would very much love to hear from you about learning and this high-touch, high-tech approach, and IFED's role going forward? Stella?
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me. I'm Stella Christie. I'm a professor of psychology at Tsinghua University and research chair at the Tsinghua Laboratory of Brain and Intelligence, and also the director of Tsinghua University Child Cognition Center. I'm a cognitive scientist, and my research is actually on learning, so how humans learn. And one thing that I want to share here is that I do notice that one of the biggest thing that we are facing is scalability, as well as the finance for the scalability. And I would like to encourage everyone that one thing that would be really useful in order to think about how to solve the problem of scalability is to rely on evidence-based learning. So rely on well-proven evidence-based about how actually humans learn. And these are very useful when we want to think about scalability, because if we rely on the actual science about how humans learned, that method can be used across many kinds of curriculums, across challenges in many different cultures and contexts. And I know that I think sometimes foundations or enterprises or private industries are worried that things from science, from research are actually very complicated and not scalable. And I want to give just one very concrete example that is not the case. So for example, in mathematics learning in particular, there is a huge amount of research from the learning sciences, including my own research. And there's one research that is published in Science that when teachers use analogy, an analogy is just use exemplars that compared next to each other. So when teachers are explaining a math concept using two examples next to each other, in contrast to doing it sequentially, here's problem one, here's problem two, these has been shown to increase by far the students' learning in mathematics classroom. So as you can imagine, using comparison is actually very much doable in the high tech. And in fact, there's already a technology, it's an open source learning that I will share in just a moment. It's called CogSketch, about how can people actually see the comparison and making use of this comparison. So I just want to give a pitch to the evidence-based research, learning sciences, because often these actually very much help scalability, and often they're very cheap. They are not actually expensive, and there is a lot of work that's already on that, like open resources and papers that can help both industry and foundations if we want to think about scalability. Thanks.
Thank you. Very exciting what we could be learning from psychology and learning and neuroscience to help guide our approach with the high tech. Let's go back to the hands. I have Ian Atfield. Go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, really interesting to hear the debate and to have to hear from such eminent panelists earlier. I'm the Regional Education Advisor for the UK government from the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office at FCDO, and it's really exciting to see both the IFED being launched at the Transforming Education Summit in New York last month, and also the work of the Commission driving forward the high-tech, high-touch panel. I guess my sort of broad plea would be around linking to, I think, the last couple of speakers and some of the comments in the chat, which is about the evidence base, because I think forming evidence of what will work in all contexts and cater to the political economy in particular, if we are raising more revenue that can generate blended multi-development bank loans, but I mean, longer experience in engaging in the education sector, as I have done in Africa and Asia over the last 25 years, say that the context can be king. And if we don't get the political economy questions right, a lot of things that have great evidence at the micro or meso level may not be able to scale effectively. I mean, I put in the chat a link to a challenge for an evidence-driven future, and that's being put out by one of the large coalitions on improving the research and evidence base for low and middle income countries, the EdTech Hub, that we work in collaboration with the bank, the Gates Foundation, UNICEF, and a number of others. Because I think we need to go beyond, just sustaining impact on learning outcomes to make sure that we can work with the most marginalized children, promote equity for children who often can't get the devices, and that thing about where a country is at and what the connectivity, the hardware, the software, the teacher capabilities, these are all difficult things to get right, not with the state of the market economy and what sort of innovations, and to some extent what will teachers, teacher unions, the administrative systems allow. Because if we don't align with government priorities and their ability to lead national education systems, a lot of things possibly will not give the desired results. But I think these are really, really great innovatives, and we're looking forward to partnering further. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that generous sharing, Ian. I think this room is just buzzing with so much expertise and insights to share. Murray, you have your hand up. If we may have you next.
Hi, yes, thank you. And thank you everyone for a really interesting discussion. I would like to comment again, echoing a similar kind of remarks that have been made by previous few people around the evidence base. I run an adaptive edtech platform in the UK. We don't export, so I'm not trying to bid for your business or anything, but I also am a co-founder of a group called the EdTech Evidence Group, founded by various UK companies who have seen within the UK the impact of well-marketed but ineffective edtech and its limited capability to deliver outcomes versus the more well-researched and impacted. A couple of things we've seen, and I would just put them to you as a sort of words of warning, if I may. There was mention about implementation, and implementation is absolutely key, and it does really vary from context to context, and that can vary even from classroom to classroom within a school. If you run at something like this too quickly, it's very easy to get taken in by something that sounds good on paper, has good buzzwords, talks about AI and so forth, but doesn't actually land in the context of the classroom. And there may be one or two teachers who can run it well, but others engage, perhaps, as Dr. Bish mentioned, because they're disenfranchised by the platform or whatever other reason. I think it's vital when you roll out an EdTech platform across a range of contexts. And from the UK, our context is less diverse, I would say, than the Indonesian system. When you roll out something too quickly, too soon, you run the risk of the Matthew effect. That is, the people already with advantage who have access or digital literacy or good Wi-Fi or whatever, take that advantage and run with it and leave the others behind. So I would really stress putting in a really strong evidence framework at the beginning. Know exactly what you're testing for, and what you're trying to do is close the attainment gap, the disadvantage gap. Try it in small contexts with the most disadvantaged students, and really make sure that you're seeing that impact before you risk putting something out wholesale and widely and actually go the opposite way and create an advantage for those already advantaged students. So yeah, I would be very careful to just take things slowly and really measure carefully impact, and have your parameters very well set up before you get running, because it's all too easy to fall into the trap of something that implements really well because it's popular but not really impactful, or that has the most effect for the students already who have the most advantage.
Thank you, Murray. I think the key point here is to be discerning of what is ahead of us and really be mindful of the metrics and data that we use to measure the outcomes. So I would like to call on Mr. Kunpeng Oy from the Asian Philanthropic Circle. Mr. Oy, if you are ready to speak.
Hi, sorry, I was just having trouble muting myself. Hi, everybody. My name is Kunpeng. I'm from APC Asia Philanthropy Circle. Thanks for inviting me for these events. It's always good to hear what other people are thinking about and where the sector is headed. More generally, for those of you who aren't aware, APC Asia Philanthropy Circle, we are a membership organization comprising around 50 philanthropists who are based in Southeast Asia. Our members have a wide range of interests. So we are actually issue agnostic. I do have to say that a lot of our members are passionate about education and are currently funding education programs in the region. We see ourselves as a bit of a convener, facilitator of some sort. We create events for our members to come together and to share learnings and to exchange ideas in education that actually helped one of our members to adapt a school leadership model where they have seen success elsewhere in Indonesia. And that's how we think of ourselves as an enabler of ecosystem change. We are also trying to address the issue of sort of cross-border giving and the difficulty of doing that, at least in present days, by thinking of a way to create an infrastructure where some of these cross-funding can be more streamlined. So yeah, watch this space.
Thank you. Very important effort. I think this conversation has really highlighted the need for us to work together across the sectors, across boundaries, as you mentioned, to really get this going. So thank you very much. I think this has been a very, very illuminating discussion. I think it's a good sign that we feel like there's still a lot more to be said on the subject, right? And this is really hopefully a beginning of more endeavors towards mobilizing blended capitals to help our education sector, help our teachers, help our schools, help our students close that learning gap. So I am now honored to call to the floor my great mentor, UID Honorary President and former Pro-Vice Chancellor of Oxford University, Sir Gordon Duff, to help us summarize this very, very rich discussion. So Sir Gordon, if whenever you are ready, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Shobi. Thank you, everyone. I have really, really enjoyed the last couple of hours. I think this, for me, it was a landmark meeting. And because I firmly believe that learning is the engine that powers the future, as somebody said. But I think learning also, or education, also creates the future. And we definitely need to create a different future for all of us. And I thought that this meeting was set up beautifully by Ambassador Tantawi, by Minister Nadine Makarim, and by Madam Lisbeth Spear. And then, Shobi, I think you have run it demonstrably very, very well. And I mustn't talk too long and spoil the whole thing because you have been to the minute all the way through. I've loved hearing from the Education Commission, from Ruan Guru, from Education First, from the Ministry of Finance, from the Education Commission again, from the Asian Development Bank, and from Temasek, and then from Sandeep Aneja, and from the Tsinghua Brain Institute, and the whole thing has been wonderful to me, and I've learned. And why do I think it's wonderful? Because it's been based on people who've done it, been there, in its real life stories, real life evidence. And we're getting away for grand theorizing to actually hearing from people who have tested out there and had made a difference. So what I gained from this was that I began to understand the importance of the problem. It is a massive problem, exacerbated, of course, by the pandemic, but it was clearly a problem before the pandemic, and it is clearly a challenge now, and we've got to turn it around. So the scale of the problem has been clearly explained, and it is quite frightening. The overall gap in funding, if we are to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals by the timescale that we've given, the gap in funding is trillions of dollars. And if we're thinking about education and the educational gap, we've heard that it's at least $200 billion globally. So we've got plenty to do. But we also heard from real life experts, and we are continuing to develop tools and methodologies to tackle this vast problem. And we are accumulating learnings about evidence on how they work and what doesn't work. And we have heard a couple of checks and balances. Some caution has been recommended, and I fully agree with that. I think we do need to be, in your words, Shobi, discerning and cautious, but not afraid. Not afraid to be innovative, creative, and get on with it. So, how do we fund the gap? Because the costs of meeting the UN's SDGs are way too much for governments to afford. Sovereign wealth funds cannot afford to pay for all this. And so we need to de-risk investment in these areas and attract money, funds, equity that's currently locked up privately. And that, for me, is a definition of blended finance. And we heard from some real experts who have done this, achieved it, and it gave me huge optimism. So I summarize very briefly by saying I think this was a very important meeting. I think it was a landmark meeting. It certainly has got me very motivated to learn more, to work harder, and to align more of the right people, because over and over we have heard it's collaboration between different stakeholders that is going to save us, and no more importantly than in the education of our children. So thank you very much to everyone, to those who set the platform, those who talked so brilliantly, and to the very perceptive questioners in the discussion. And thank you, Shobi.
Thank you so much, Sir Gordon. Very apt and keen observations and a great summary of today's very rich discussion. I would now very much love to move on to our closing of this tonight's event, and we are honored to have a representative of Minister Suharto Monoarfa, Minister of National Development Planning of the Republic of Indonesia. We have Ibu Fifi Yulaswati, Master of Science, expert staff of the Minister for Social Affairs and Poverty Reduction. Ibu Dr. Fifi, when you are ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Shobi. Honorable Executive Lead of the Trihita Karana, Mr. Tantowi Yahya, distinguished speakers and all honored guests, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Very good evening, good morning, and good afternoon. It is indeed a pleasure to listen and learn from all speakers in this important forum, the Trihita Karana Road to G20 Dialogue on Financing Education, Tackling the Learning Deficit Through Digital Solutions. Over the last 3 decades, Indonesia has actually been successful in providing education for all school-age children, as can be seen in the increase of school enrollment rates and education attainment, and also some other indicators shown in the number of the global reports. Nevertheless, such positive trends in educational outcomes were disrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic that spread it out across the world. The COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in school closures, and more than 60 million students were out of the classroom. The unplanned, sudden, and rapid move to online learning with no training for teachers, limited access to the internet, insufficient bandwidth, and little preparation had brought to the unconducive to sustain learning and academic achievement. The situation has resulted in what the so-called learning loss, since students experience the decreasing quality of learning due to the ineffectiveness of online learning. Although it is an alternative method of learning in the case of such difficult situation as the pandemic, classroom-based learning cannot be replaced by on-screen learning. As learning activities have inevitably converted to online, both students and teachers are highly dependent on digital technology in support of the teaching and learning processes. However, not all areas in Indonesia have sufficient access to the internet due to the lack of the ICT infrastructure. With the increasing demands of online learning, the government of Indonesia is facing such difficult situation and has to deal with twofold problems: technology divide and digital gap nationwide. In fact, there are some groups of Indonesians, especially those residing in remote areas, still live behind technology. In this sense, we must be aware that there are many schools that don't have internet access, since blank spots are found in all regions across the country. The current data have clearly shown there are about 12,548 villages that don't have 4G mobile services, and they are located both in rural and urban areas. These circumstances will certainly hinder digitally supported teaching and learning activities. The 2021 Susenas data also shows that there is only 31% of elementary school students using a computer to access the internet. Only 46% of them are able to access the internet at home, and only 39% of students use the internet to support the learning process. Under these circumstances, it will be difficult for students, particularly from the poorest families, to follow digital-based learning. Another impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on our education was also in school dropout. According to the UNICEF study, 1% of children dropped out of the schools after the COVID-19 outbreak, with 70% of them reportedly leaving schools due to the economic difficulties. Children with disabilities were more than 3 times as likely to drop out of school as children without disabilities. So tackling the learning deficit through digital solutions can be done by taking breakthrough actions, such as we learn in this event. This include increasing investment in digital learning skill developments, strengthening collaborations amongst industries, educational institutions, and the committees to identify the needs for and availability of digital skills in the future, developing curriculum and instructions in digitally enhanced learning, including digital literacy materials, and also strengthening partnership between educational institutions and digital platform providers in support of learning innovations. In addition, the following entry points could also be the core of our efforts. 1, focus on addressing learning loss and preventing dropouts by bringing back to school students at risk particularly of marginalized groups. Second, support the teaching professions and teachers' readiness. Third, maintain social and emotional well-being of students, teachers, and staff. Fourth, expand the definitions of the right to the educations to include connectivity. And five, remove all barriers to connectivities, such as blank spot and shortage of technology devices. Dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, in the last part of my closing remarks, I would like to address the issues of financing scheme in relation to the implementation of SDGs. As globally acknowledged, the SDGs aim at the fundamental transformations of the world countries and societies, including Indonesia, which requires changes in mindset and behavior, a conducive and enabling public policy, environment, and the deployment of innovative technologies as enabler, I would say. In this regard, financing is the key to realizing the SDGs. Particularly due to the COVID-19 pandemic, investment on a massive scale are needed in the education sectors, as well as other sectors, such as creating a sustainable infrastructure, expand low carbon and high efficiency product activities. Blended finance has shown to be an effective approach that leverages development finance to attract private sectors for contributing to fill in the SDGs financing gap. As the gap is mainly faced by developing countries and notably the least developed countries, the G20 Development Working Group, where Bapenas led all the discussion, has developed G20 principles for scaling up private and blended finance. The blended finance that combines different sources of funding could reach the most vulnerable and underserved communities. Blended finance operations, therefore, are designed or need to be designed to respond to local needs and realities. As the current gaps are more about last mile problems, blended finance could also fund innovative solutions. At the same time, in many developing countries and LDCs, social sectors are also underfunded, which constitutes a structural impediment to achieve the SDGs. In this regard, blended finance could also fund evidence-based studies that help policymakers analyze the interlinkages of the SDGs targets and to prioritize the funding. To end the speech, I'm indeed delighted to have this opportunity taking part in this event for this road to G20 dialogue. I can feel the enthusiasm of all speakers and hope that it will fervently inspire all of us. From here, we can make a great deal of effort to improve the quality of education in Indonesia for the betterment of the nation. I thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih. Thank you, Ibu Fifi, and thank you. We're thankful for the leadership of the government of Indonesia across the ministries to bring forward innovation in financing and technology and education, and the presence of all our panelists and our participants in this roundtable discussion after the panels, I think tonight has been energizing. We're moved by the scale of the problem, but we are hopeful that together we can do something about it. So without further ado, once again, thank you for your presence with us. We want to take a photo before you leave. Please don't go yet. Open your camera if you don't mind, please, so that we can commemorate hopefully a historical moment towards tackling the learning deficit. If I may ask my colleague to help give the cue so that we know when to stop smiling.
Check. Yes. Okay, yes. Shelby. Yep.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. All right, everyone. Smile to the camera. 3, 2, 1. Capture. Check. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Shelby.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And everyone, please do, as you leave this space, please unmute and you can bid us good night, have a good rest, good day in your own language, or thank you, or have a great day, so that we can really highlight the diversity of the room Terima kasih semuanya.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
I would
Thank you,
also like
everybody. Good night.
I would like to thank our sponsors for
Thank you,
the
Shobi.
THK
Thank you, Alex.
Road to G20 events,
Bye.
who has been very gracious
Well done.
and allowed
Thank
us to
you.
for this.
Thank you everyone. Thank you,
Thank you,
Ali.
everyone.
Hingga saat ini, Ruang Guru sudah digunakan oleh lebih dari 38 juta pengguna di Indonesia dan Asia Tenggara. Ruang Guru berupaya untuk terus berkomitmen, memberikan konten berkualitas, dan memperluas akses pendidikan terbaik melalui teknologi untuk semua siswa dimanapun dan kapanpun. Ruang Guru juga berperan aktif menyediakan berbagai jenis pelatihan untuk pengembangan diri dan soft skill dalam membantu para pencari kerja untuk meningkatkan skill yang berkualitas dan siap kerja. Dalam 8 tahun perjalanan Ruang Guru, telah banyak pencapaian yang kita raih bersama. Di tahun ke-8 ini, Ruang Guru kehadiran keluarga baru, yakni Kala Nanti dan Scotters, yang telah resmi menjadi bagian dari Ruang Guru. Ruang Guru juga mendapatkan penghargaan Anthem Awards 2022 dan HR Asia Best Place to Work for 2022.
We are grateful and honored to accept the Indonesia's Best Companies to Work For in Asia 2022 Award.
Semua pencapaian perjalanan Ruang Guru hingga saat ini tidak luput dari kerja keras, dedikasi, serta semangat tim Ruang Guru dalam mencapai satu tujuan yang sama bersama Ruang Guru. Terima kasih, tim Ruang Guru, dimanapun kamu berada. Mari kita lanjutkan perjalanan ini.
TASMI is a learning aid which uses technology to raise students' attainment.
It's on that device that they're absolutely attached to, and they can use it regularly and consistently whenever they want.
When things are easy to use, especially with students in this day and age, they're more likely to use it.
The questions get progressively harder. I feel myself getting challenged, which really helps with my revision. And I've seen results with my mocks, my recent mocks.
Revision in general is not my favourite thing. And especially for physics and biology, I found it quite difficult to motivate myself. But the fact that it was just a really organised app in itself was incredibly helpful to me.
In building our programme, we've used methods identified by academic researchers as the best ways to learn. One of TASMI's key principles is that practice makes permanent. That an amateur practices until they get something right, and a professional practices until they can't get it wrong. That's what we're trying to get you to do with your revision.
This is why I'd recommend it, is because it was just there, convenient, in our home, regular, reliable.
I certainly would recommend it to another school. I don't know if I want to though, because we're quite high on the school league tables, so maybe we want to keep it a secret.
TASMI isn't a silver bullet. Academic attainment only happens with dedicated teachers and willing learners. But what we can offer schools and families is a method, a programme that's shown to improve attainment. And in the right hands, it's extremely powerful.
What is the biological basis of intelligence? At THBI, we're tackling science's most difficult and ambitious project to understand the nature of complex intelligence.
Understanding intelligence necessitates interdisciplinary research. Brain, cognition, artificial intelligence.
THBI houses world experts in cognition, brain, AI, as well as state-of-the-art research infrastructure under one roof, affording interdisciplinary research synergy in real-time interactions. At THBI, we have Non-Human Primate Research Center, Brain Imaging Center, THBI Child Cognition Center, THBI Social Interaction Lab, THBI Center for Brain-Inspired Computing Research. All these supporting international, interdisciplinary, and collaborative working environment. THBI is unique in bringing 3 lines of research, brain, cognition, and artificial intelligence, under one roof. This visionary strategy places THBI as a world-class research institute. Join us in our quest to understand the nature of intelligence.
What if millions of children and young people like Arya were given a better chance? The International Finance Facility for Education is a game changer. IFED multiplies donor resources so countries can make investments in education and skills for the economy of tomorrow. We are on a mission to reclaim the future for young people. Learning is the engine that powers everyone's future. That's why the learning and skills crisis impacts us all. IFED creates 7 times more impact for donor dollars compared with traditional aid. With access to affordable finance, countries can make investments without burdens for the future. We'll close the gap where it matters most by turning millions into billions without trade-offs or extra resources, and innovating at pace to support country-owned learning programs. Now is the time to join a collaborative network that can achieve ambitious development goals. All we need is your investment in the future. IFED, a generation of possibilities.